operating from the engagements that we make with the residents, our strategic plan, the national development strategy. So we pick key issues from those, and we come up with a budget focus. So for 2022, when we crafted the budget, the focus was on water and sanitation. You'll find that expenditures that the city is incurring is skewed towards water and sanitation. We also wanted to promote small medium enterprise growth and development, realizing that our economy is highly informal. So the budget also had the aspect of wanting to formalize the informal sector by creating inducive frameworks which will enable them to operate and also bring in the much required revenues into the city. We're also looking at means and ways of stabilizing the city by having strategies which will promote city going forward in view of service delivery gaps. We also wanted to focus on harnessing ICTs. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the gaps which the city had in terms of ICTs utilization. For 2022 capital budget, that is the proposed capital funding structure. I highlighted earlier on that the capital budget was a 10 point something billion. So it's constituted by own revenues constituting 55%, intergovernmental fiscal transfers, commonly known to you all as devolution funds, at 23%, grants at 12%, public-private partnership at 3%, and loans at 1%. From this disaggregation, it tells a story that if we do not collect the revenues with the intention of funding the capital budget, if we do not collect the revenue, as much revenues, the 55%, it means we will not be able to fund the capital program. Also, the devolution funds, the 23%, this is just an allocation that we put in the budget as directed by our current ministry. So it's if those monies don't come, we are not able to fund the capital programs. So from just devolution and own revenues, that's already 78% of the capital funding structure. So just those two, if they do not perform, then we are able to do the capital works as projected in the budget. What I also want to highlight to you is that we do a break-even budget. So it means that if we fall short of expending where we are supposed to expend, it means there's something which is suffering service delivery. We are not optimizing to the point that we wanted to do. So that is the budget disaggregation, where we have our salaries almost close to 13 billion. Our supplies, this is where generally you would refer it as general expenses, but new terminology, supplies, also around 14 billion, repairs, maintenance, capital expenditure. So you can tell that the greatest part of the budget was allocated along these lines. As we all know that as City of Harare, we do not operate in a vacuum. There are macroeconomic fundamentals which have a bearing on our operations, as are alluded by the town clerk. When we did the budget in October, November last year, the exchange rate was at 85, one US dollar to 85 Zimbabwe dollar. And to date, the exchange rate, the interbank rate is hovered around, is around 358, which is a massive, almost a times 4 increase. There's resurgence in inflationary pressures. When we did the budget, the inflation was a two-digit, but as of 31 May, inflation was pegged at 131. Also, interest rates, they've been going up. We've been having rising fuel prices, rising consumer price index, and rising arbitrage. As we all know that as a city, we comply to government regulations that we operate using the interbank rate. But when we go in the markets, when we procure our goods and services, we are not getting them at the interbank rate. We are getting them at the unofficial rate, which is much, much higher than the governing interbank rate. So that disparity is creating a lot of challenges in terms of operations for the city, because there is no way we can get the required funding to fund exchange rate, which is beyond the recommended government rate. We also have our internal environment issues, where we have rising debtors. We also have rising creditors. And our employees, there's an increasing demand for competitive salaries, because the value of the salaries that they're getting has been devalued. We also have challenges of downtime of our ERP system. I want to touch on the rising debtors. As you know, as a city, we don't have the frameworks which are very compelling for residents to pay. It has to be a persuasive approach. We cannot operate the way the private sector does, that if you are owing something, they can come immediately and attach your property and sell. We can't do that. It is all about engagement. So from this perspective, we are appealing to you, our residents, that we need to pay what is due to the city so that our city can move forward. I would want to highlight that every time we are failing to pay, there's a cumulative gap in terms of service delivery. What we failed to pay 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and current is a cumulative service delivery deficit, which we are now incurring. So every time we are failing to pay and the city fails to do the required capital outlays, the required capital expenditures, there's a ripple, a downstream effect that year after year we will then need more and more and more and more. It's delayed capital acquisition and an increase in capital outlays. So I'm appealing to residents that we are in this together. Let's join hands so that we can pay the city, so that the city is able to deliver what is due to you. As much as we are having the rising debtors, because of the limited cash flows, the city is also having creditors. What is the impact of rising creditors? The people that we do business with, because our cash flows are constrained, it means the time that we take to pay them is longer. So they forward price what they charge the city, taking into consideration that maybe payment is not going to come in 2 weeks. So they take that into consideration. So it means that the prices that we get are at a premium, rather than if the cash flows were in order, would be able to get our prices at a reduced premium. So that has an impact of the reduced cash flows have an impact on the creditors. Going to increasing demand for competitive salaries, as I highlighted earlier on, that our employees, when we did the budget, it was 1 to 85, and now we are 1 to 300 and something, 58. Not that the salaries are paid, but it's just an appreciation of how the salaries have depreciated. We need employees who are also well remunerated, so that they can give out their service to the city. Going to downtime of ERP system, we have been having challenges with the ERP system, and we are in the process of procuring a new ERP system. A tender has been floated, due process is being taken. There have been issues of delays when people come to make payments. So this is something which the city has taken on board, and action is being taken in terms of the ERP system. I also want to highlight status of the audits, that 2018 is audited, 2019 is audited, it's just signing off, awaiting signing off, 2020 is under audit, and 2021 draft audit statements are ready. Now, we go to the performance metrics, where we look at the revenue inflows, we look at the debtors, the creditors, expenditure, capital expenditure. That's the budget versus accruals versus receipts. So, from January to May, the proportionate budget, excluding funds which we get from Zinara, from devolution, that's the 16.05 billion. And I just put it in comparative with May. The proportionate budget of 3.21. Then we have the accrued income. This is what we bill. So the billing for May was 18.3. You then maybe pose a question to say, why the differential? When we did our budget, we put in our tariff charges in US dollars, and council approved to say that on implementation of the budget, we would then rate the tariff at the going interbank rate. So the changes in the interbank rate enable council to retain the true value of the tariff as it was originally crafted. That's where the differential in accrued income is coming. In terms of receipts, you also see that our receipts are very, very subdued. Our budget was approved in February. January we did not bill the new tariff. total receipts from January to May amounting to 10.84 billion against a budget of 16 billion, a proportionate budget of 16 billion, and a proportionate accrued income of 18.3 billion. So you can see the underperformance that the city is incurring, and as I alluded earlier on, that is a gap in terms of available resources which enabled the city to give service delivery. That's the regime of our inflows from January till May, where we see that in January it was 1.4 billion, February 1.2, March rising up to 2.3 billion, April 2.3, and a significant in May 3.3. I would like to comment more on this to say that even if as if we are seeing that it's an increase, but in true value, in true sense, it's not, because of the present value of the dollar comparative to the value of the dollar back then in February. It may seem to that we are getting more inflows, but if you are going to factor in that aspect, you will find that it's not a significant increase. What I also want to highlight in terms of our inflows is that in as much as the billing is the billing potential is increasing in line with the charges of interbank rates, we also have outstanding debtors. When we closed the 2021 year, the city had a balance of close to 18 billion in terms of debtors. So the inflows that come in, we need to accommodate the legacy debt, to say that if we accrue, if we get 1 million Zimbabwe dollars, it's not like that money is for the current year potential. It also has, we also have to take into consideration that we have got legacy debt and discount it, so that we get a true picture of performance. So when you do that, you see that the collection efficiency for the city is way below 50%, posing a major problem in terms of rising debtors. So that's the graph showing the inflows and the potential which is growing, though in true sense, when you discount it, it's marginal. Those are the key income stream performance, where we have property tax supporting the activities of the city. In terms of the budget and the receipts, there's a variance in what the city received, a 4.175 billion against a proportionate budget of 5.836 billion, and even a further higher figure in terms of accrued billing, which is linked to the interbank rate. We also have water and sanitation as the second, with a 2.991 billion. It's also underperforming. We also have refuse removal. It's underperforming as well. Zinara grant is also underperforming. And then we also have our intergovernmental fiscal transfers, commonly known as devolution funds. they also underperforming. I highlighted earlier on that when we did the budget, the allocation for intergovernmental fiscal transfers were largely directed to water and sanitation. We have projects in water and sanitation which we allocated these monies to. So what this means is that failure to get these monies, we are unable to implement these interventions which bring about the service delivery sustainability. That's the accrued expenses January to May. From that, you can depict that activity is happening in compensation of employees, goods and services. Not much is happening in capital acquisition, be it from own funds and capital acquisition from grants and other. Compensation of employees is an obligation which we cannot defend. So ordinarily, what we get, we need to pay our employees. The argument can be, the question you may raise is that the greater part of the money that you are getting, you are allocating it to compensation of employees. I want to highlight to you that when we did the budget, the proportion of compensation of employees to the budget was 30% of the budget. What seems to be a higher percentage of compensation of employees is because we are not getting the money that we are supposed to get. So when you put what we pay against the inflows, it will then up the percentage of compensation of employees. Then in goods and services, this is where we have our electricity, we have our fuel, we have our water chemicals, and all those, they are indexed to the US dollar. So the movements in the US dollar have an impact on the overall price of the said commodities. In terms of capital acquisition, because of limited cash flows, we did acquire some service delivery assets from our own funds. In terms of capital acquisition from grants, this has been a paltry position because the allocated devolution funds, we have not received them as per our plans in the budget. These are the employment costs which I was